Harry's Wife. Part 68.7. Backlash. The Tide Turns. Many of you listening understand that narcissism is at play between Harry's wife and all those that she interacts with. Many of you don't like her for her behaviours, her hypocrisy, the money-grabbing behaviour, the gold-digging, the lies that have been told, the inconsistencies. Many of you did not realise that it was narcissism at play. You just didn't like what you were reading about, hearing about, and so forth. And you've come to learn, through the provision of my analysis, more about the narcissist and narcissism. Of course, there is a percentage of individuals who just don't get it, and are known as the shuggers. They are unable to analyse the evidence that demonstrates quite clearly what is occurring. But more people are beginning to notice, and as I've explained elsewhere, more people notice, they comment as such on social media. But also, it starts to appear with regard to particular commentators, journalists primarily. They don't necessarily see that it's narcissism at play, or if they do, they don't mention it. More likely it is that they don't recognise what it is. And instead, they single out the behaviours, the characteristics, the actions, the mismatch between what is being said and what is being done. And there are various journalists who have done so far, and of course have found themselves subject to attacks, some of which border on criminal, for what they have written or stated. These individuals may in some instances be self-serving. Of course, they recognise what is going on, but it's about column inches and drawing attention. But more and more individuals, voices of reason, we might say, are starting to recognise that something is very wrong in the state of Monty Shit Show. That they realise that these behaviours that are being exhibited are wrong, unpleasant, unnecessary, hypocritical, and unwelcome. One such individual is Jonathan Dimbleby. There'll be many of you who don't know who this person is, but he is an established and respected British broadcaster. He's an educated man, and he has been involved in an extensive TV and radio career. He first began his career at the BBC in Bristol in 1969, and he has been involved in The World at One, The World This Weekend, various flagship current affairs programmes, for instance, This Week. He's been involved in documentary series. He's joined the BBC and was involved in their new flagship political programme, On the Record. And he is a well-respected individual. He has anchored ITV's general election coverage and has presented Any Questions on BBC Radio 4. He is an educated, well-versed individual, and demonstrates also his own disapproval, which shows that the backlash continues as against the behaviours that are being witnessed. And this is recorded in the Mirror newspaper that reports, in an article written by Dave Burke, TV presenter hits out vicious and cruel Harry's wife and Harry for Oprah interview. Jonathan Dimbleby lashed out at the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, saying their interview with Oprah Winfrey did undeserved damage to the royal family, and called their behaviour vicious, cruel, and horribly self-serving. A TV presenter who penned a biography of Prince Charles has blasted Harry and Harry's wife, accusing the pair of vicious, cruel, and horribly self-serving behaviour. Jonathan Dimbleby hit out at the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, saying their interview with Oprah Winfrey did undeserved damage to the royal family. The 76-year-old, who famously got Charles to admit to cheating on Princess Diana, Princess of Wales, during a 1994 interview, said he was very disappointed with the way Harry conducted himself. According to the Daily Mail, Dimbleby told an audience at the Buxton International Festival in Derbyshire this week, "I think that the interview was a very great shame. I think it did great damage of a kind that was undeserved to the royal household, and specifically to the Queen and her family. He said he fails to understand the remarks Harry made about his father, and added, I believe a lot of the insinuations he made were not consistent with fact. Of course, Mr. Dimbleby, accurate as he is with his observations, doesn't realise that it is narcissism that is occurring here. And he identifies that many of the insinuations in the interview with Oprah Winfrey were not consistent with fact. He sees the disconnect. Many people recognise that disconnect. They see the difference between what is being said and what actually occurred, and often finding themselves in a position that they don't understand what is behind the behaviour. And by recognising it as being narcissism, this not only aids understanding, but allows the individual to gain context as to why this person is behaving in the manner that they are, and reduce their own confusion and bewilderment about them. Many individuals recognise the behaviours when dealing with a narcissist. They recognise that lies are being told. They recognise that bold-faced denials are being issued where they ought not to be. They recognise that somebody is deflecting. They recognise that somebody is going round and round in circles. They may not even realise that these are forms of manipulation, but they recognise that the behaviour is wrong, but they don't know what is driving it. They don't know that narcissism is functioning and is what is driving the behaviour of the individual. Mr. Dimbleby, an educated man, doesn't appear to recognise that it is narcissism at work, but he at least recognises that something isn't right and has spoken out about it. He has cast his own moral judgment on their behaviour. The article continues. During the interview earlier this year, Harry and his wife alleged a member of the royal family had made negative remarks about son Archie's skin colour. Harry also claimed Charles and his older brother William were trapped by their role, and said he had been cut off financially after quitting frontline royal duties for good last year. He added that Charles had stopped returning his calls. Dimbleby said it was a great shame that the pair went ahead with the interview, which was broadcast to millions earlier this year. He claimed that he met Harry when he was young and described him as a charming, very nice man. But the veteran broadcaster said he was disappointed with his recent actions, claiming he was being led by the nose a bit by his wife. Well, it's not just a bit, but again, notice how Mr. Dimbleby recognises the change that has occurred. He met Prince Harry and described him as charming and very nice, and then has noticed that he is now being led by the nose a bit by his wife. Dimbleby went on to say that some remarks should have been made in private, a consistent view that has been articulated by people. You will know people, perhaps this includes yourself, where you or the individuals were outgoing, pleasant, fun individuals without too many worries about life, and then along comes the narcissist. And it's particularly obvious when you see it happen to somebody that you know. You may not recognise it for yourself, because it's harder to detect when you're caught up in the maelstrom. But those of you who have a brother that might have been ensnared by a narcissist girlfriend, or perhaps a parent that has been ensnared by a narcissist, maybe as a step-parent, or one of your friends has entered a new relationship, and you see the marked change, the before and the after, the impact of the sustained devaluation or a series of collective devaluations upon the individual, causing their demeanour and character to alter. This alteration isn't permanent. What is happening that is as a consequence of the external stressor, that is, the sustained devaluation or the repeated blow of corrective devaluations. The emotional empathy of the victim is reduced, along with it the empathic traits, which means that more narcissistic behaviours come to the fore. Argumentativeness, anger, pride, vanity, jealousy, envy are just some of them. The individual isn't able to cope as effectively. They're short-tempered. They lash out at people. Their energy levels are reduced. They perhaps may become depressed, have no interest in doing things. They aren't the charming and full of life individual that they once were. They always have to talk about running things by the other person. You notice that they decline invitations because it's easier to do so than have to have the customary fight with the narcissist, whereby the narcissist seeks to assert control to nullify the threat that is posed by you inviting your friend on a night out, but not the narcissist. Typically, you're inviting your friend because it's a girls' night out, and the male narcissist, of course, unconsciously feels that his control is threatened by such an invitation, and therefore is motivated by his unconscious narcissism to court a fight with his girlfriend in the expectation that she won't go out. And this happens so often that you notice that your friend now declines invitations whenever they're offered, and then you start to forget to invite them or decide it's not worth it because they never come out anymore. And there is a stark difference. And Mr. Dimbleby, even though he doesn't spend time with Harry on a daily basis, the change has been marked. And this is something that many people, including you, good viewers, have noticed the difference in Harry's behaviour from how he was viewed previously until how he has now become as a consequence of the influence of his wife. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.